the institution that carved many a minds that have shaped the history of South Africa and the continent, from Robert Sobukwe to Julius Nyerere and Seretse Khama, Robert Mugabe and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. All were once students at Fort Hare University. It was also the start of the tour of Eastern Cape Province, an appropriate place for South Africa's tourism minister to give a lecture.
Carbon space is finite. There's only so much. If it's up, it's up. And we have already used up, as the world, most of the carbon space, the bulk of it. And who used up that carbon space? The developed world. So as developing countries, we should be very strong that if we look at that remaining carbon space, we want our fair share.
The minister went to great lengths to labour the point that unless the carbon space issue is rectified, it will forever hold sway over wealth patterns in the world. South Africa was the first country to introduce the national minimum standards for responsible tourism. These also factored in the environmental impacts of tourism. Global carbon emissions for the tourism sector is mainly from air travel, which accounts for 40% of the sector. Land transport is also high at 32%, followed by accommodation at 21% and tourism-related activities at 7%. But these global jargons have to translate into local action.
Travel and tourism happens in local communities and in local economies. The role and capacity of local governments at the implementation level, therefore, can never be overemphasized.
Tourism currently contributes 9% to the South African GDP, and the University of Fort Hare has a center for research focusing on tourism and its environmental impacts. Somebody who understands both tourism and Fort Hare is the current CEO of South African Tourism, Thulani Nzima.
A bit nostalgic, but I'm glad to see that this university has progressed since then. It's quite sentimental in a way. Although I may not have completed my degree here, but I always put it in my CV and say I attempted my degree at Fort Hare, got kicked out, but I'm proud of the association with the likes of Mandela and even Robert Mugabe, by the way. He studied here. I stayed at ZK Matthews, which is quite historical as well.
But it's not just the university that lends a hand to this tourism drive. It would need supporting infrastructure of its surrounding town, Alice.
Alice in particular could actually be developed as initially a university town, and there are programs to try to do that. At the center of that development is certainly Fort Hare, both from a historical perspective, that most of the African intellectuals come from here, but we still, I think, currently have a lot of African students that are here. You would actually remember anybody who's gone through an institution is likely to come back as a tourist to the town where that institution is sitting. And we believe that we need to capitalize on that as much as we can. We must create an African Center of Excellence in Fort Hare. But as we do that, we build Alice as a university town.
The exposure of this picturesque and cultural wonderment of the Eastern Cape Province lays in the hands of the MEC for Economic Development and Tourism, Mcebisi Jonas. The sector's ability to create jobs is his main preoccupation. Hosting South Africa's World Tourism Day was a first step to leveraging the Eastern Cape potential.
Potentially, I think it's going to attract a lot of jobs into the province, and we think that we've got enough natural endowments to grow the sector further beyond where it is. There are huge initiatives both in the Wild Coast and also on the eastern side of the province, as well as you move towards Port Alfred and beyond, to try to grow and create new products for the sector. We also have a major program to develop skills for the tourism sector. We are currently having a huge training program based in Port Alfred, and also working on another tertiary training program to be based in the eastern side of the province. So tourism is a seriously important part of our economy.
South Africa aims to be among the top 20 destinations in the world by the year 2020. This is a direct challenge for South African tourism and the man at its helm.
For me, that's a direct deliverable. The minister crafts policy and strategy and say this is where he wants to be, but in fact the nuts and bolts are done from my side.
Globally, tourism continues to experience a cautious recovery, but the CEO says that we'll never get back to the glory days of pre-recession. Among the biggest challenges for South Africa is attracting tourists to this long-haul destination.
Forget about the pre-2008, 2009 numbers. That's euphoria. You know, where we are at the moment, we're looking at how can we continue the growth trajectory. And that's what we're talking about. When the minister talks of a buoyant economy, buoyant tourism here, what he's actually referring to is the fact that we are showing growth on the 2009 or 2010 figures. We have shown growth on 2011 figures, and that's a positive trend against the global numbers.
South African tourism numbers in the first quarter of 2012 grew by 10%, with its number one market, the United Kingdom, growing by 10%. Arrivals from China also grew by 73% to 50,000 arrivals. The Eastern Cape province is in need of such arrival numbers to boost its ability to create job opportunities. South African Tourism is working with the Eastern Cape Department of Tourism to realize the university town of Alice.
I chair the marketing working group, which is the sitting of the CEOs of the various provinces and the cities. And in there, what we're focusing on is to make sure that we can share opportunities, we can leverage skills, we can share budgets where we have limited budgets, and also strategic initiatives. If there is a strategic initiative here that is aimed at making Alice a little bit of a vibrant city to attract tourism, leveraging on the brand of Forte, very well, we'll support that as South African tourism.
But this was just an introduction to an even more colourful day. The World Tourism Day celebrations were to be at a place of history and centre of Xhosa culture. It was a short-lived wait as the very next day we arrived at Mbashe, named after the river that runs through it, with its source at the Drakensberg and its mouth in the mighty Indian Ocean. This river is the lifeblood of the community.
The citizens of the local municipality drink water from this river. This river serves people who reside in Dukwa, who reside in Willowvale, and who reside in Elliotdale. Hence the municipality is called Mbashe Local Municipality.
This site is a strategic choice to host the event. It aims to highlight rural and ecotourism. And this lodge is an example of successful investment in rural tourism.
We've just done a skills audit. There are people here who produce sticks, smoking pipes, bags like this one, the one that I'm carrying, the outfit that I'm wearing, the beads and all that stuff. And we still use grass, for our roofs. No, even though we know that there are certain people who are modern, but the Rondavel shape, which is a traditional style of the Xhosas, is still there. The hospitality in our area. So I mean challenging internationals and locals to come and visit our area, because there's a lot that they would learn, the tradition, the custom.
But all these traditions and customs have to translate into tangible results that will sustain livelihoods.
Tourism is all about sustainability and creating jobs for people. And at the moment, tourism in South Africa is the fastest growing sector of our economy. It's already at 9% of GDP. But we must translate that into sustainability and into jobs. And if I look at the long-term projections for tourism in South Africa, excellent. But we need to bring a new dimension to really make it sustainable. And that is to work on the green dimension of tourism. It is something that all over the world becomes a sought-after project. So therefore, in practice, we have to look at, for instance, the building codes and green building, waste management, and new, much more environmentally friendly land transport. Those are all the issues that the tourism industry should also look at. It's very important that from a national level, we put provinces in a position where they can showcase themselves. What makes them unique? What are their best tourism products? And so all the provinces bring something to the table. The Northern Cape, for instance, they understand that maybe landscape and wildlife should not be their number one product, but in the Northern Cape, they concentrate on adventure sports, hang gliding, motorcycling, all that kind of thing, mountain biking. But the Eastern Cape brings something special. It brings wonderful landscapes, national parks in the Karoo and Addo, private park Shamwari. It brings wonderful coastline, the Wild Coast, absolutely unique. But it brings people with a special history. And this area here is rich in culture, customs, heritage. And that becomes a very important product now. That countries market themselves on culture, heritage and lifestyle products. And the Eastern Cape, they have that in abundance.
The Eastern Cape remains vast lands and scenery, and most of which is underdeveloped. Investing in infrastructure development is of the highest priority.
National government is willing to provide funding, but we feel very strong that when we invest, it should be sustainable. Sometimes we see projects that we invest in, and after 3 or 6 months, they simply die off. What we want to see is where we invest. After 2 or 3 years, there's still a thriving business, a bed and breakfast or a guest house or any other tourism industry, selling artifacts or whatever the case may be. And we have a number of programs in government. The Tourism Enterprise Program, it's a partnership between government and the private sector, many success stories. We have the Expanded Public Works Program in government. So we extend our hand, and we hope that many people in communities will take that hand, because there are many success stories.
Mbashi municipality is also home to one of the world's most famous statesmen. Nelson Mandela lives a mere 10 kilometers away from this river, in the home of his childhood, Qunu.
Mvezo is first and foremost where the Mandela roots are located. It's where the chieftaincy of the Mandelas is located. But also of great significance is where our national icon, my grandfather, Nkosi Dalpunga, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, was born. And we as a community in Mvezo are trying to ensure that we preserve that legacy and that rich heritage.
Madiba's legacy and footsteps continue to attract the interest of the world to his doorstep. Chief Mandla, his grandson, sees this as an opportunity to expose the rich Xhosa culture to a wider community.
Cultural tourism, as you can see globally, is becoming of significance, and people are traveling immensely just to go learn about other people's cultures. And I think this is why the ministry is trying to work with rural communities and shaping us to ensure that we are enabled to unpack our stories and our legacies. But in those areas, you find that we control vast amounts of land that is just laying fallow, and we then need to go back to our people and revive that, because you will also, as you say, understand that agri-tourism is of great importance. And if we can ensure that we tap into that sector, we will draw a lot of support.
The village of Qunu is where Madiba grew up after his father was deposed as chief, and it's also where he chose to retire. The Nelson Mandela Museum in Qunu retraces his remarkable life journey.
The entities were really shaped by the Department of Arts and Culture as far back as 2000. And they looked at preserving the 3 areas where my grandfather comes from, which is Mvezo, Qunu, and Mthatha, the Bunga building. Since my installation as chief in April 2007, the museum has really embraced my coming home, and we are now beginning to work together so that we look at shaping the story through the Mandelas. You know, we often say that no one can tell the Mandela story better than the Mandelas. So this is why we work jointly with the legacy institutions my grandfather has created, so that we become of service to preserving his legacy.
The culture and customs, the rich language and its hard-to-pronounce cliques, the history of modern-day South Africa can all be traced to this province. Being here makes it easier to understand the inspiration behind the famous speech of former President Thabo Mbeki when he recited, "I am an African."